Hey everyone, this is Alex USA Days. So today let's talk about running tests in Playwright, different ways to do that, and let's talk about Playwright config and how it impacts your tests, different options you have there. So it is module 7. I think we're getting closer to the page object model and kind of bring everything together, but this will be like the last step until we will get some end-to-end stuff in place and we'll get it into a page object model with this Playwright series. All right, so running tests and configuration. So running tests in Playwright can be done in various ways depending on your needs. We can look at some of the popular examples on how we can run Playwright tests. So we can run them in CLI or command line interface, how we were doing in previous video, right? And there are different commands you can use. For example, you can run all tests using npx playwright test. Or you can run a specific test file if you put the direction to the test file in your command. For example, npx playwright test /example spec.js. We can run specific browser in the tests based on your projects. So if you have a project with Chromium browser, you can specify that in your command. npx playwright test --project equals Chromium. You can run tests with a specific tag, and I'll show you how we add a tag to a test. So, for example, npx playwright test --grab add smoke, and it will run all of the tests that have a smoke tag. You can also run tests with a specific name in the test description. For example, tests with a specific name. For example, npx playwright test /example.spec.js grab and then provide a test name in quotes. We can also run tests using Visual Studio Code app. The name of the app is Playwright Test for VSCode. It's official app from Microsoft, and I'll show you how we do that. Or we can run tests using built-in UI runner using npx playwright test UI command. We can also add a specific scripts in package JSON that will execute our Playwright tests in a specific configuration. So here we added test smoke, npx playwright test --grab add smoke. Now, once we're done with the CLI, we'll take a look in the config, and there are different ways that you can configure your Playwright within the configuration file itself. There's some of the options that you can set. For example, you can set Playwright by default to run in a headless mode or not. So set headless true or false. If you want to see a browser window, if you don't want to see it, right? You can set your test to start with a specific URL. You can set a base URL. Once your test starts execution, that's the link where the test is going to go by default. You can run tests in parallel, so you can run multiple tests at the same time by setting fully parallel option to true. You can also have settings that are on the global level and per project level settings. I also added a public repository with the config that I will be showing, so you can get it at Alex USA Days Playwright -4-4QA-automation in the GitHub. So let's take a look into actual code and practice all this stuff. Let's go ahead and run some of the commands to trigger different ways on running tests. So we finished with assertions and we had this only tag for the assertion. So let's remove that and let's go to login. So I'm going to try it with the login. I'm going to add that only for login. You might see that, I updated the config. We're going to get to the config later in the video, but this config will also be updated in the GitHub. The whole thing, this whole code is going to be available in GitHub, so you can get it from there if you don't want to retype it here. This is a lot of lines when we're going to go through it. All right, so now let's get back to the login spec. So here's our test. This is going to run. So how can we actually tell Playwright what to execute, right? So we can use the terminal. This is a CLI command line interface, and one of the most basic commands that we all used already. So npx playwright test. So this will execute everything you have. And because I have dot only right here, it will only execute this particular test. So let's run it. Otherwise, it would execute everything in the tests folder if I didn't have this tag right here. So the tests folder is defined in your config. In the config right here, you have test dir.tests. So this determines where your tests are and where it's going to go to look for the tests, right? So it goes in the test folders, finds that there's .only, and it executes .only. Okay, so what if we want to execute a specific file? So we can do that. So we say test and then tests. So we have to provide the path to the file that we're trying to execute. So instead of login, we're going to do assertions.spec.js and run it. No tests found. All right, let's clear it, see what happened. So tests assertion. So there's a typo. Assertions. So the test file name is actually assertions.spec.js, not assertions. Okay, let's run one more time. And now you see it is actually ignoring .only. It goes directly to the path where the tests are and it executes that file that you provided in the CLI. And it went and ran through all the tests that present right here. Now, if I had a .only tag right here, for example, let's clear it out, run it. Now it would go into the file, it will find that there's .only and it executes only that particular test. Okay? All right, let's clear the console. I'm going to remove this .only. So the next thing that we can do, we can specify a project that we want to run. And normally different projects means that they are configured for different browsers. So here in the Playwright config file, I have one project that is commented out, Firefox, right? So I press Control / uncommented. So now this project is available. If I will just go ahead and run everything, which will execute my only test, now you will see two browsers are running. So Chromium and Firefox. So both of the projects are enabled and it is running into browsers. But let's say I want to execute only specific projects. So project can have a configuration like screen resolution, is it headless or not, and so on. So I can say playwright test -- project equals, and then I need to provide project name. So I'm going to say Firefox. Let's run it. And now you can see, even though I have two projects enabled, it's running tests only here in Firefox. All right, let me comment it out, save it. Let's clear the terminal. Okay, next one is tags. One of the most common way to run tests is to run using tags. And you can add tags here in the test description. So like I can say this is a smoke, one tag, and I can say this is a regression, for example. Let me remove .only. Let's give another tag, smoke tag, to a test here. So test name at smoke. And you can also give tags to the describe. So I can say at let's say assertions group. Okay, so we have smoke, regressions, and assertions group. So to run the tag, you can say npx. So npx playwright test, and here you can do -- grep, and then you need to provide tag name. So for example, at smoke. If I run it, I get an error. Okay, so this will work on Mac, but it's gonna error out on Windows. So you want to put your tag in the CLI if you're in Windows in quotes. On MacBook, add smoke should work. So, but this, you want to put it in quotes. Now let's run it again. And it finds the tests with a smoke tag and runs them. Why would you need a tag, right? Sometimes you have tests that are specific to specific scenarios. Some tests are designed for regression, some tests designed for priority 1 testing, priority 2, some tests designed to run as a smoke test. So you can use tags to tag your tests and then run specific tests for the required testing, right? So if I need to run assertion group from the describe, I can say today we are running the assertion group. So the whole set of tests there will run. Whatever here in the describe that has this tag will run, all of them. Now, if I need to run only regression tests, I can say grab add regression. And it will run only one test, right? So using tags for in test description is a very common way to execute specific tasks that you want to run. All right, let's clear it out. Also, you can use a test name. So it's going to be very similar as doing it with a tag, but instead of the tag, you just provide the whole test name. So instead of, let's say, regression here, we can grab a test name. Let's go to example and let's grab has title and run by specific test name. I'm gonna find it and run it. Okay. Okay, so the next way to run your tests is by using VSCode extension. So you go to the extensions and you search for Playwright test, and you find Playwright test for VSCode. Now you can see this is developed by Microsoft. If I'll uninstall it really quick and restart it, you see this Flask is gone. Then we do the installation and the Flask appears back here again. So if I click on it, it shows me all the tests that I have. So essentially it goes into the config file, right? Finds the test in directory, in that test in directory grabs all the tests. For example, in login, if you go to test, there's only one test and one test is displayed here. I can click on run test and it will run it. Now in assertions, there is a describe block, right? I can go to the describe block and then you can see within the describe block, I have multiple tests that I can run, right? And again, I can run test and I'll have the execution log here. Test is running, reporting test results. Perfect. You have different configurations here. So if we go back to the extension and we read through it, we can see different options that there are. So obviously you have to install Playwright, but here you can see there's some project configuration. So right now we have one project that's only available in config and it's Chromium. So you can select different browsers. If I'll go into Playwright config and I enable Firefox, right, save it, go to my extension. Now you see Firefox is available, so I can uncheck Chrome, check Firefox, and let's also show browser. Let's run login with Firefox. So this time it will run in Firefox and it will actually have a test showing and running right here, right? So then going down the documentation, so you can see you can run tests with a single click, right? The very top. You can run multiple tests. You can run in watch mode. So this little eye, if you click on this little eye, whenever you update the test and save it, it will rerun it. So continuously run it. You can show browsers, we just did that. You can show trace viewers. So by the end of the testing, when the testing is completed, it will show you the trace. So everything, all the steps, all the execution that took place, you can see in the trace viewer, right? Every step of the way, what it was doing, where it was clicking. You can have pick locators. So the same thing that you do with the pause, where you have an option to click on the elements and pick a locator. You can do that here as well. You can have debug execution. So, I mean, it is a very convenient tool if you use in VS Code. If you want to have a full run and like a good visual reporting, it was in the run here. I think Playwright Test for VS Code is a pretty good extension. All right. So the next way to run our tests, we go back to the terminal. Let me just close the extensions here. We go back to the terminal and we can use built-in UI runner. So I can say npx playwright test and --UI. And now you have a very similar interface that you had with the extension without installing the extension. So if you're not using VS Code, but you want to have a nice visuals to your testing, you can use the Playwright Test UI, right? And this is very handy. So same thing, we're in the test folder that's defined in our config. We see all the tests available. So we see files on the high level, right? Within the files, here we have describe block and then test blocks. And I can go ahead and run a particular test. I can also have a continuous mode with the updates. I can go and click it on Open VS Code to get me to that place. And then I have all the steps, so all the before. Okay, I click multiple times and it's just freaking out now. All right, so it brought me to the code here. Let's go back. So it has the before hooks, all the steps and after hooks. So after and before hooks are your like default hooks that you'll have in place. So browser, context, and page, and after opening and closing them. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on, but there's some just essentials that are done on the background. But here we go to the page, we pick the locator, we expect it to be something. There's metadata for all this run, like resolution, browser, platform, stuff like that. You can also see the action, before action and after action. So within the text, right? Located text content, there's action itself, and then there's before the action and after. So what's happening? We're selecting this H1 locator, right? And then we're verifying that there's certain text within that, right? Prints out the communication and the network. I mean, it is a very handy tool for running your tests, right, and debugging your tests. All right, you can have different color scheme. All right, okay, so give it a try. And the last thing that I wanted to show in terms of running tests, many times you will have your tests not coming from the npx Playwright, but you will have those scripts built into your package JSON. So there is this scripts in package JSON, and here you can write sort of like abbreviation for your script. So, and then what it does. For example, I can say test and then say smoke, right? That's abbreviation for a runner. And then for it, you can provide what it should be doing. So I'll say npx playwright test, and let's do -- grab at, I have to do single quotes because I have double quotes opening up the whole line. So smoke, single quotes, double quotes. So if I'll run this command, it will go and execute this script. Why do you need this? Well, you can have multiple different configurations or actually different scripts running after one another. So you can sort of like chain them and build them to run with one command, right? So if I'll go and now do npm run, and then I say what script I want to run, I want to run test smoke, it will go ahead and execute this, right? And I can have a very long script, or I can even have multiple scripts, and then I can run them together by having this script that unites them together, right? So let's say test all, I'll say test regression, right? Regression. So the name of script that I'm coming up is absolutely whatever you want to be. But here you have to have an exactly correct thing that you want to run. So grab, let's do grab and do regression tag, right? Okay, so now I have two scripts, right? Two scripts behind those. I want to call them annotations, but you can call them whatever. The names, the abbreviations, or like the names for the scripts. And I can write a third one. I'll call it test all. And what will test all do? Well, it can do npm run test smoke, right? And npm run test regression. Okay, here we are. So let's run this script first, right? So we're going to run test smoke, npm run test smoke. Run it. It went and didn't find any smoke. There's no smoke tag. No test found. Why didn't find any smoke? Let's see what went wrong. Grab smoke. Do I have a typo somewhere? Hold on. Package JSON. So maybe it is complaining about the actual single quote. Yep. All right, let's try it one more time. So I'm running just the smoke by itself was grab. Okay, it found it. Clear it out. I want to remove Firefox from here. And now let's do package JSON. So npm run test smoke. So it grabs this script, goes inside, runs it. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So it looks like it actually did not like a single quote for the tag here. So you can do a backslash, double quote, backslash, double quote if you need to use double quotes inside double quotes, kind of thing, right? So they become available. Okay, so now let's run. Yeah, let me clear out the console. So now let's run test all. So test all will go and run this and then run this. So you kind of chain your tests. Like if you have multiple configuration, multiple tests that you need to run, you can do a script that will run them all one by one, right? So I'll do npm run test all. And you see that executing smoke tests, and then goes and executes regression tests, right? It's pretty cool. Okay, this is great. And the last thing that we want to take a look at is our config. So why we want to look at the config as we're doing the test runs here? Well, because your config is connected to your testing. Like whatever you have in config, that you will have your test running with, right? So there are multiple lines here, and there are different parameters that you can configure. Some of you will see const and then require. Some of you will see import. So it's just a different way, pretty much, of doing the same thing. This is an older construction with require. With ES6, with newer version with JavaScript, you can use imports. So if you have a config that has const and you want to use import, or vice versa, you can just go into, let's say, ChatGPT. You can say do import instead of require, and just copy paste the config here. And what you will see it will do, it will update your code from like an older JavaScript to a newer one. And now instead of require, it uses import. But essentially, it's the same file. Don't get confused by it, right? Import is just a newer way. And there's some description coming with it. ChatGPT in general is very good, like on doing things like that. You know, updating older JavaScript to newer and vice versa, answering like small questions, finding things out. Not always great on certain code that it needs to write itself, especially with framework that it's not very familiar with. It might start making up functions and things that don't exist. So just be careful with it, but I think it's a very good tool, you know, to have a conversation with, to help you out kind of with creating JSON file, or making a text file, a string out of JSON, stuff like that. It's like maybe tedious tasks that you need to type out. You know, ChatGPT is very helpful with that. Okay, anyway, let's get back to the config. So here I have a link for the whole documentation for Playwright, where you can find details on how to set config and different options. But here there is config that is opening here, closing here. So everything was in this config object. This is all the settings that you have, right? All the options. So we have our test and directory. Here is a default time for how long a single test can run. It is in milliseconds, so 50 multiplied by 1000 is essentially just 50 seconds, right? You can see this format for convenience, or you can see just a total amount of milliseconds like that. Then there is an expect, right? And within expect, you have a timeout. And timeout is how long it's going to wait for an element to show up on the page, right? So 10 seconds, in this particular case, 50 seconds. So it gives a page an opportunity to load something, and it will wait for element to show up for 50 seconds. Obviously, you know, if the test execution is too long, if it's longer than 50 seconds, so this is going to abort the whole thing, right? So you want to be just kind of mindful what is here in the options. Fully parallel, so when you have multiple browsers, if you want to have execution in multiple instances running in parallel to speed up your tests, you just say fully parallel true. If you want to run one by one, you could say false, so we have it full true. There's a option for bit only, and then processing VCI. So what this line does, if I am running my tests in a tool, continuous integration tool, like let's say GitHub Actions, or Bitbucket, or GitLab, or Azure, there are different CI/CD tools. So if it is running in one of those runners, remote runners, and this option is here, it will ignore only. So it will ignore test.only flag, right? And it will still execute everything if you're running it in CI/CD. So this is just if you forget only, or you have only on your local machine, you push it to your CI/CD, it's still going to execute everything. Okay, so retries process. So there are, again, two values here. The first one for your local environment, the first one for your remote environment, the second one is for your local. So if something fails, on the remote environment, it will attempt to pass it twice. If a test case fails, it will try to pass it twice. If it fails on local, it will immediately give you an error. So the first one for the remote, the second for the local. For example, here we typed 11 and then verifying that the value is 11. Let's verify that it is like 12. Let's run this test. Let's just do the regular npx playwright test, and what it will do, it will run the test only, right? Let's run it. And I should fail this because I typed in 11, but I'm checking for 12. Let's see it running. Let's see it fails. It's actually waiting 50 seconds now to find this value. So again, that's coming from the config. So let's, instead of 50, let's do 10 seconds and 10 seconds, or even like 5 seconds for an element to appear. Let's cancel it out, clear, run it one more time. So this time is going to be a little bit faster, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all right, 10. So, and the assertion comes back. Unexpected value is 11, but we're looking for 12. You see that the test run just once, right? So let's say I want to rerun tests. Sometimes they're flaky tests, like they sometimes pass, they sometimes fail, just because something is not stable on the browser, right? So instead of 0, I can say 1. So it will do another attempt, it will fail, and then it will rerun it. Again, let's run it. Okay, you see it failed. That's the very first try. And then it goes and tries one more time. So this is for our local. Now, CI will do 2 by default. And you want to have that, right? Let's put it back to 0. So because sometimes there may be even more instability if you're running it remotely in the pipeline, and you want to absolutely make sure there like flakiness, or if there's flakiness, you don't fail test because of it. If it still passes, like you're safe. Workers. So workers is essentially amount of parallel runs that you can have. If I will remove the dot only, everything's gonna run, right? I will run everything, and let's enable like Firefox and WebKit. So I enabled everything. 3 browsers, all of the tests. In the remote, I will have only 1 worker, but I have undefined for local environment. What does it mean? Well, it will grab as many as it, allowed to grab. So let me run it. And now I will see that execution is happening using 8 workers. So I have 8 instances running. 8 browsers are opened right now, running the tests, and they're Chromium and Firefox and WebKit. So I have 8 differences, 8 different browsers running in parallel to one another, running through those tests, right? So I mean, if you have a really big test suite, maybe you'll have like 1,000 cases at work. Running them in parallel, if they don't conflict with one another, will be a huge time saver. If you don't want to have undefined, you can say just let me have 3, right? Let me cancel the run here. Yeah, terminate. So Control C to terminate. Run one more time. So instead of 8 workers, I'm just going to use 3 workers. All right, so let me cancel it again. Takes a little bit of time. I think we might actually hang it now. I don't want a debugger. Okay, let's try one more time. NPX Playwright test. So I just deleted one terminal completely. And let's go. All right, so 3 workers. So undefined will take how many cans? So in my case, 8. 3. If I provide 3, it will run 3. And same for your CI/CD, right? Then we have reporters. So here we're using multiple HTML lists and JSON, and there's a place where it saves test results. It's defined right here. Now, if you want one reporter, you can have one. So if you have one, you don't have to have it in square brackets like that. You can just say HTML and you're good to go. This will work. So if I'll run with just one reporter, and let me add that only here. So running one test. At the end, we will see HTML reporter. Okay, it is doing 3 tests because I have 3 browsers. That is fine. One test is being run in 3 browsers, and it fails because I need to update the value. Clear it out. Let's run one time. It also saves the videos on the run, you can see. All right, it's running. Okay, now it completed. No test results because it saves only on fail. You can see it cleared the test results folder. I can have my NPX Playwright report. Let's take a look. Open localhost. So here is the rerun. So the tests in 3 different browsers. The tags are showing here, right? So with that being said, I can return multiple reporters back. Let's say I don't want HTML. I can exclude it. But if I'm providing more than one, now you have to have a square brackets for the whole reporters the block, and then each reporter has to be in a square bracket separated by a comma. And you can add options here, right? So let me cancel it out. Run one more time, now without HTML reporter. And since I don't have an HTML reporter, you will not going to see this. To open last HTML report, run npx playwright show reporter, because it's gone. The use block, this is global config. Applies to everything by default, if no local configuration provided within the project itself, right here. Right, so from the reporters we moving into the use. So use is a shared setting for all projects, right? There's I have a link to document here. So base URL, the URL you start by default is here. Trace, so if there's a retry, it does the first retry and the test fail, it will save the trace. Headless mode, so do not show the browser. It will save a screenshot on fail only. It will save a video on fail only. And then we go into project settings. So this is per browser. Kind of same use here, but this overrides this. If I have a project-based settings, they will be more important. Like if I say headless here false, that means I will run in headed mode. So if let me clear it out. I am going to use 2 browsers, so Firefox and Chromium. And let's run it. And you will see, so Chromium will not show up. The browser, Chromium browser opened right here. And there's a pause somewhere in my test. It actually paused on the pause in the test. right? It doesn't pause on the test if you're running in headless mode without a browser popping up. But if you have a browser popping up, it will pause, right? Have an inspector running. Okay, so this is taking settings from Chromium because it was running Chrome, headless was to false, and I have browser showing up. Now in Firefox, there was no specific settings for it. It went to the global use, right, to the shared, and it says headless true, so it never showed up Firefox. And I can like say swap them, right? So this is true, this is false. Now if I run it one more time, now I will actually see Firefox showing up, right? Because Firefox is going to grab settings from here, and Chrome going to grab settings from here. Okay, and here we are. What browser is up? Well, the Internet Nightly, but let's go to help about Nightly. So Nightly is a Firefox version, right? Okay, so hopefully this is clear. Like on the settings, what are you going to be using most of the time? So for me, I do change from headless to headless true to headless false a lot if I'm debugging. If something fails, I just say headless false, and I add the pause in the test so I can debug and see what happens step by step. I use that a lot, right? You might have base URL, so your default URL might be different where you want your test start execution at before you go somewhere. For example, here, base URL is example.com, and I have page go to and specific address, right? If I will comment this out, and I'll say on the new line, I'll say page go to, and just leave like a forward slash. So it will go, let me add a pause right here immediately on the execution where it starts, right? From the end, it will go to your base URL. So now I'm in config, headless false, so we want to see execution happening, right? False, and let's run it. Here is our browser, and it's paused right now. So the next step, it will go to the forward slash, which will take the value from the base URL from the config. So move to the next step. All right, go to forward slash, and opens up example.com. And then everything else is going to fail. If I'll start moving to the next steps, it's not going to find anything to click or anywhere to go because it doesn't exist on that page. All right, let's go back to the login. Control Z. Let's bring everything back the way it was. Okay, maybe even remove some pauses here. All right, so that is essentially it. Running tests, like the basis of it, the config, the basis of it. There is some additional stuff on the config that you might want to have in it, but it's more in depth. You can have a global script in the config that you point to. This is more advanced topic, but if you need to set up credentials, like save a token or set cookies or local storage and grab stuff from local storage like authentication, so you don't have to log in multiple times, you can have it in a global script. So there's a script allowed that runs, there's one function that should return something back, right? It will run before any other test starts, before any execution starts. Like it can be like additional configuration, environment setting up, and so on. And here, the last thing is like your web server. If you need to run a local server before you run your tests, we don't need that per se in our case, but in some instances, you might have a local server that will run the specific commands and will be on some local address that you want to start before going into your testing. Okay, so this is it. Hopefully this was clear. Again, if not, just pause, take notes, use documentation, read through documentation. This is a little bit more advanced. You know, we're looking at some configuration values that might be new, commands that might be new, like scripts and stuff. Use ChatGPT. It's a very good helper, right, in your progress and questions that you might have. It might give you, it does, generally does, if you give some code and ask ChatGPT, hey, what is this code doing? It will give you generally good description. And now I have this link and the GitHub that is public that will have all the code here that we're working on. So you can go here and just copy Playwright config from here. And you don't have to type it out, right? So the link is available with the video. Now I'm gonna add a little git. So git add. We didn't talk about git, but it is a way to manage code when multiple people work on the project. You know, you can save your code and kind of push it in the repository somewhere on the server where everyone have access to. So I have a course specific to Git on Udemy, but essentially I did some changes in the code. So I'm going to do git add with a dot, so it will record all those changes. All right, then git commit. So I'm saying, okay, I am ready to commit all those changes. So updated, dated, updated config, updated tests with tag. So I'm just saying a message what exactly happened, right, with the changes. And I have the Git already set up. We're not going to do it in here. It's a little bit more advanced stuff. But if I'll do git push, so everything I just did on my local machine, it will go to the Git, all the changes, everything. And now it's also available here. So if I'll go into the repository, you can see there was a little update coming in. It was just done right now. And the files and places that were updated, all indicated here. Okay. All right, this was Alex USA Days. Thanks for watching and bye-bye.